Welcome to another episode of the Retirepreneur Podcast. I'm your host with this week's executive summary for busy entrepreneurs building their second act business. Today's episode is designed for maximum impact in minimum time.
Today we're doing a deep dive into something that's absolutely critical for any seasoned pro starting a consulting practice.
The consulting agreement.
Exactly. But we're going beyond just, why you need a contract. We're looking at how this single document is really the cornerstone of your entire second act.
That's such a good point. I mean, when you've spent decades building up your expertise, earning your reputation, the idea that some vague paperwork could undermine all of that, it just feels like an amateur mistake you shouldn't be making at this stage.
It is. And we're framing this agreement not as some, annoying legal thing you have to do, but as the clearest sign that you are running a real professional business.
A legitimate business.
Precisely. We see so many experienced professionals, maybe in their 50s, 60s, and they are so confident in their knowledge, their expertise is, flawless. But they jump into consulting, and they rely on the same old handshake deals they used to make inside a company.
Yeah.
And that is the trap.
It's a massive mental shift, isn't it? Inside a corporation, if the scope of a project changed, well, the budget just absorbed it. Or you had legal and HR to back you up.
Right.
As an independent consultant, you're it. You are the legal team, you're the HR department, and you're the one who eats the cost if a client decides not to pay.
And that's really the core insight here. The difference between, helping someone out and being taken advantage of isn't your expertise.
Yeah.
It's your willingness to document exactly what both of you agreed to before any work begins.
And the stories we see are, they're almost always the same. A consultant, let's say a retired CFO, takes on a project. It's all based on a quick conversation. 3 weeks in, the client suddenly remembers a huge deliverable they forgot to mention.
Right.
Or they need 3 more reports, for free. They say it was implied.
And just like that, the consultant is stuck. Do I tick off the client right now and maybe ruin the relationship? Or do I just do 40 hours of free work and kill my own profitability?
An impossible choice.
The agreement just removes that choice from the equation. It sets the professional standard right up front.
Okay, so let's dig into that. The first big actionable idea is using this agreement as your sort of ultimate client filter.
Yes, this is what really separates the seasoned pros from the newcomers. Think about it. When you were starting out decades ago, you probably felt like you had to apologize for your rate.
Oh, definitely. You felt timid about asking for anything formal?
That time is over. Your experience gives you the authority, the confidence to quote your rate and immediately say, great, I'll draft the agreement. No apologies.
But what happens when a client pushes back? When they say, oh, this is too much paperwork, or can't we just trust each other?
That is the single biggest red flag you will ever see.
And the advice is?
Walk away. Just walk away. If a potential client resists signing a clear, simple agreement that lays out the scope, the price, and the terms, they are telling you exactly how they plan to behave down the line.
That's a hard line to draw, though, especially if it's a big name, a potentially high-profile client. You don't want to burn that bridge.
But look, the real professional clients, the ones you actually want to work with, they expect this. They expect structure. They know how business works.
They run on contracts themselves?
Of course. The people who fight documentation are either amateurs themselves or, and this is the important part, they're already planning for a dispute. They want ambiguity, so they have an excuse not to pay you later.
So the bridge you think you're saving is actually the one that's going to collapse on you.
100%. The agreement isn't just protecting you, it's signaling your own professionalism.
That reframes the whole thing. It's not just a shield, it's a statement of credibility. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 big benefits this document gives you. It's more than just legal stuff.
Absolutely. The first one, okay, that's the obvious one we just talked about. It's your basic legal protection. It lets you point to a signature when things go wrong.
But the next 2 are more strategic.
Way more strategic. Yeah. The second benefit is how it builds client confidence. When you present a clean, well-structured agreement, it immediately signals that you know how to run a project.
The client thinks, okay, this person has done this before, they're not winging it. It actually reduces their anxiety.
It does. And the third benefit, which might be the most important, is that it forces you to think through the entire engagement from start to finish. All the potential problems.
Like what happens with intellectual property? That's a huge one. If I develop a new process for a client, who actually owns that when we're done?
Exactly. If you don't define that in the contract, it can create a huge mess. You might think you own your methodology, but the client thinks they bought it because they paid your invoice.
So you have to spell it out.
You have to spell it out. The client owns the final report, the final deliverables, but you retain the rights to your underlying tools and processes. The agreement forces that conversation.
Which brings us directly to the second major insight, eliminating ambiguity with extreme specificity.
This is where most consulting gigs go sideways. Vague language. You don't need 10 pages of whereas and heretofore.
No legal jargon.
Just strategic, bulletproof clarity, especially in the scope and deliverable section.
Okay, let's use that example from the research because it perfectly illustrates the point. The difference between just giving advice and providing a professional service.
Okay, so the amateur scope would say something like, provide financial consulting services.
Which means nothing. It's an open door for anything they want to ask for.
Completely useless. The professional scope, on the other hand, is surgical. It's precise.
Give us the professional version.
Conduct a 3-month cash flow analysis covering Q4 2025 through Q1 2026. Deliverables will be 1 written report and 1 90-minute presentation. This engagement specifically excludes implementation support or ongoing monitoring.
Ah, so you define the start and end, and you say what's not included.
Stating what you won't do is just as important as stating what you will do. That's your perimeter fence. That's your insurance against scope creep.
And that fence is what you use when that inevitable email arrives 3 weeks into the project. The one that says, hey, could you also just quickly analyze last year's data too?
This is where the agreement does the work for you. You don't have to be defensive. You just get structured.
So what's the response?
You reply and say, that's a great idea. Since that falls outside the scope we defined in Section 2.1, we'll need to treat that as a Phase 2. I can put together a quick estimate for that. Do you want to add that on now?
And just like that, you've turned a potential conflict into a new billable project.
You're just following the process you both agreed to. No drama. It's just business.
And that professionalism flows right into our third insight, which is all about the money, specifically the deposit.
You have to remove all ambiguity around money. Total fee, payment schedule, late fees, all of it. But the single most powerful tool for a consultant
is the upfront deposit.
It is. Experienced consultants simply do not begin work without a financial commitment. The standard is often asking for a pretty meaningful deposit, somewhere between 1/3 and even 1/2 of the total project fee.
Half the fee up front. That sounds aggressive. Couldn't that scare away a good client who's maybe a little budget conscious?
It's a fair question. But think about what that deposit actually does. First, it's a commitment signal. If a client balks at putting out 1/3 of the fee, they're not really committed to the project, or they have cash flow problems you don't want to inherit.
And it obviously reduces your own risk. You're not starting from zero.
You have cash to cover your initial time and resources, and it creates a psychological anchor for the client. They have skin in the game now. They're more likely to be responsive, provide feedback on time, and pay the final invoice.
It's another filter, a way to weed out clients who aren't serious.
The best filter there is.
So we've hit the big ones, scope and payments. But to really build out this foundation, there are a couple more key sections we need to touch on.
Right. You absolutely need a section on the timeline and milestones. And this isn't just your due dates. Critically, it outlines what you need from the client.
Because that's where the delays usually happen, right? The client doesn't provide the data you need, or you can't get access to the people you need to interview.
Precisely. So you write it in the contract. Client will provide all Q4 financial data by January 15th. And then you add a clause that says if they're late, the final deadline shifts accordingly.
It puts a responsibility back on them. It protects your timeline.
And that leads to the final piece, mutual responsibilities.
Right.
This is where you really turn it into a partnership. You outline what you promise to do, like weekly updates.
And what they promise to do.
Exactly. They promise to provide timely feedback, say within 48 hours. They promise to designate one person as the point of contact who can actually make decisions.
So no more death by committee.
It avoids so many headaches. When you put it all together, the agreement handles the big legal stuff like IP, but it also manages all the day-to-day friction points that can derail a project. It truly is the whole foundation.
So for everyone listening, what's the one action to take this week?
It's simple. You don't even need a client for this. Just pick one consulting service you offer or that you're thinking about offering and just draft the scope section.
Don't worry about all the legal language, just that one section.
Be absurdly specific. Define the project, list the exact deliverables, list what you need from the client, and list what's explicitly excluded.
That exercise alone, just thinking through it, is what starts to build the professional muscle.
That's the discipline. That is what transforms your expertise from just helpful advice into a sustainable, profitable business.
The big takeaway here really is about confidence and control. A solid agreement lets you operate on your terms. It gives you the structure you need to confidently say no or to walk away from a bad fit.
You've earned the right to be selective. And this document gives you the license to do just that. It lets you focus on doing great work because you know the foundation is solid.
That's your executive briefing for this week. If you found value in these insights, share this episode with fellow retirepreneurs and subscribe to the Retirepreneur newsletter at retirepreneur.com. Follow us for weekly strategic insights, and remember, your most successful chapter is just beginning. Until next week, keep building.